They told you that you were too emotional, too intense, too caring, too attached, too much, and slowly, you started believing it. You began shrinking yourself, holding back your feelings, questioning your worth. But what if I told you something most people never realize? You were never too much. You were rare. And today, I'm going to explain why being called too much was never a flaw. It was proof that you carried something most people could never handle. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you will never see yourself the same way again. Why they called you too much. People don't call you too much because you are wrong. They call you too much because you feel deeply in a world that feels shallow. You care when others detach. You feel when others numb themselves. You love with presence, not convenience. And that scares people, because when someone like you enters their life, they are forced to face something uncomfortable, their own emotional limitations. Most people were never taught how to sit with emotions. They were taught to suppress, distract, avoid. So when you show up with honesty, vulnerability, depth, they don't see strength, they see threat. Not because you are overwhelming, but because you remind them of what they've lost inside themselves. Depth is rare in a numb world. Look around. People scroll instead of feeling. They distract instead of healing. They replace instead of repairing. Depth has become uncomfortable. And you still feel everything. You notice energy shifts. You read between the lines. You sense silence louder than words. You still feel everything. You notice energy shifts. You read between the lines. You sense silence louder than words. That's not too much. That's emotional intelligence. But emotional intelligence is rare, and rare things are often misunderstood. Gold looks like dirt to someone who only values plastic. Why they try to dim you when someone calls you too much, what they are really saying is, please be smaller so I don't have to grow. Your presence asks for honesty. Your love asks for effort. Your depth asks for accountability. And not everyone is ready for that. So instead of rising to meet you, they ask you to lower yourself, to laugh less loudly, to care less deeply, to expect less honestly. But here's the truth they never tell you. People who ask you to dim your light were never meant to live in your brightness. The pain of being rare. Being rare doesn't feel special at first. It feels lonely. It feels like being misunderstood in every room, like loving harder than you're loved back, like giving more than you receive. You start asking yourself, why do I always care more? Why do I feel so deeply? Why does this hurt me more than others? And slowly, you start blaming yourself. But rarity always feels lonely before it feels powerful, because rare souls don't blend in. They stand out, even when they don't want to. You were never asking for too much. You weren't asking for too much attention. You were asking for presence. You weren't asking for too much reassurance. You were asking for consistency. You weren't asking for too much love. You were asking for real love. And in a world addicted to half-effort connections, your standards felt heavy. But standards aren't demands. They're boundaries. And boundaries scare people who benefit from your lack of them. Why your love feels intense. Your love feels intense because it's intentional. You don't love out of boredom. You don't attach out of fear. You don't care halfway. When you choose someone, you show up, listen, invest, stay present. That kind of love is rare. And people who only know surface-level attachment confuse depth with pressure. But depth is not pressure. Depth is truth. You trigger healing, and people hate that. Your presence makes people reflect. Your honesty exposes cracks. Your empathy highlights avoidance. Your emotional awareness mirrors their unhealed wounds. And instead of healing, many choose distance, so they label you too sensitive, too emotional, too intense. Labels are easier than growth. Stop apologizing for who you are. You don't need to apologize for feeling deeply. You don't need to explain why silence affects you, why distance hurts you, why inconsistency confuses you. You are not weak for wanting clarity. You are not needy for wanting effort. You are not dramatic for wanting honesty. You are self-aware. And self-aware people don't belong in shallow spaces. What happens when you meet the right people? One day, something changes. You meet someone who doesn't flinch at your depth. Someone who doesn't feel overwhelmed by your care. Someone who doesn't ask you to shrink. Instead, they say, I see you. I understand you. I'm here. And suddenly, you're not too much anymore. You're finally enough. Not because you changed, but because you're finally seen by someone who can hold you. Your rarity is your power. Rare souls love deeply, feel honestly, connect meaningfully, heal quietly. They don't need validation from the crowd. They don't chase attention. They don't beg to be understood. They wait, because what is rare should never be rushed and never be wasted on those who cannot recognize its value. Final truth, deep and slow. You were never too loud. They were too silent. You were never too emotional. They were emotionally unavailable. You were never too much. You were simply rare in a world that forgot how to feel. So the next time someone tells you that you are too much, smile softly, because now you know the truth. You were never too much. You were rare. And rare things are never meant for everyone.